On a cold winter night in the heart of the city, a man everyone ignored, dirty jacket, torn gloves, and weary eyes, noticed something no one else did. A well-dressed businessman sat slumped against a lamppost, his face pale, his hands trembling as he searched his empty pockets. The crowd hurried past without a glance. The homeless man hesitated, then reached into his own pocket, pulling out a crumpled $4 bill, everything he had left. What happened next would shake the city's assumptions about wealth, dignity, and who really saves whom. Malik had once worked in construction, a strong and proud provider for his family. But years of layoffs, an injury on the job, and a cascade of medical bills had pushed him into homelessness. Now he lived under an overpass near the bus station, often going to sleep hungry. Despite his hardships, Malik still believed in kindness. He always kept a small bottle of water in his backpack to share with someone who was thirstier than himself. On that particular evening, the winter wind cut like a blade through the city streets. Malik was sitting near the entrance of a convenience store, hoping to collect enough spare change to buy a cheap sandwich. Most pedestrians avoided his eyes, and some even muttered under their breath as they passed. He had long grown used to the dismissive looks, especially the way some people seemed to assume that, because he was black and homeless, he was dangerous or untrustworthy. Just as he was about to give up and return to his shelter, Malik noticed a man sitting on the curb a few yards away. The man wore an expensive gray coat and leather shoes, but his posture was slumped, and his face had the dazed look of someone in trouble. Malik watched as the man checked his pockets again and again, his expression growing more desperate. People streamed past, some even stepping over him without a word. Malik felt a tug at his heart. He knew what it was like to be invisible. Despite his own hunger, he rose, gripped the last $4 bill he had, and approached the stranger. He didn't know that this simple act of generosity was about to change both of their lives forever. Malik crouched down beside the man and quietly asked if he was all right. The stranger didn't answer at first. His lips were dry and his breathing shallow. Malik noticed the man's hands shaking and the look of panic in his eyes. "Hold on," Malik said softly, though the stranger barely seemed to hear. Malik knew that look. It was the look of someone who hadn't eaten all day. He jogged to the corner cafe and spent the last of his money on a steaming cup of coffee and a small sandwich. As he returned, he saw the man trying to stand, but his legs buckled beneath him. Malik caught his arm before he could hit the pavement. "Easy there," Malik murmured. He helped the man sit back down, handed him the coffee and sandwich, and waited patiently as the man ate in silence. For a few moments, the world seemed to blur around them, the rush of traffic, the flashing billboards, the people too busy to notice. After eating, the stranger finally looked up. His eyes were red, as though he had been crying. Malik noticed something in them, gratitude, but also deep sorrow. The man tried to speak, but his voice was hoarse. "Thank you," he managed, barely above a whisper. Malik nodded. "You're welcome. You'll be okay. Just need to get warm." He offered the man his own threadbare scarf, ignoring the sting of the winter wind against his neck. It was only then that Malik realized the man's clothes were not just expensive but finely tailored, like someone who belonged to another world entirely. Night deepened. As the cafe lights blinked off and the streets emptied, Malik stayed with the stranger, making sure he didn't collapse again. He didn't ask questions, didn't expect anything in return. What Malik didn't know was that the man beside him, Michael Harrington, was not just wealthy but one of the city's most powerful business leaders. Earlier that day, Michael had been robbed while traveling between meetings, losing his wallet, phone, and identification. The shock, combined with hours spent wandering without food or warmth, had left him weak and disoriented. But Malik saw none of that. He saw only a human being in need. The racial lines that so often divided the city blurred in that moment. A black homeless man offering comfort to a wealthy white stranger. Their meeting was not about charity. It was about shared humanity. By dawn, the city had softened into pale gray light. Malik helped Michael to his feet and guided him toward a nearby clinic. Just as they approached the door, two security guards blocked their way. eyeing Malik with suspicion. "Sir, we don't allow loitering here," one guard said sharply, his eyes fixed on Malik. "I'm just helping him," Malik said, gesturing toward Michael, who still leaned on him for support. The guards exchanged doubtful looks. One muttered something under his breath about people like you, the words carrying an old, familiar sting that Malik had endured all his life. Before Malik could reply, Michael found his voice, still weak but firm enough to cut through the early morning air. "He's with me," Michael said. "He saved me last night." The guards hesitated, clearly startled by the authority in Michael's tone. They stepped aside as Malik helped Michael into the clinic. Inside, the staff quickly attended to Michael, bringing him warm fluids and checking his vitals. Malik stood quietly near the door, feeling a mix of relief and self-consciousness. Moments later, a nurse approached Malik and said the man he'd brought in wanted to speak with him. Malik stepped into the room to find Michael sitting up, looking far better than he had the night before. "You didn't have to do what you did," Michael said, his voice stronger now. "You gave the last of what you had to a stranger. That's something I won't forget." Malik shrugged, almost embarrassed. "You looked like you needed help." "That's all?" Michael smiled faintly. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Malik shook his head. Michael told him his name, but it meant little to Malik, until Michael added softly, "I own Harrington Enterprises." Malik stared in disbelief. The man he had helped with his last $4 was not a desperate wanderer, but one of the wealthiest men in the city. For a moment, neither spoke. It was as though the night's events had rewritten the meaning of wealth. A week later, Malik received a call from the clinic. Michael wanted to meet him again. When Malik arrived, he found Michael waiting outside in a sleek black car. They drove in silence for a few minutes before pulling up to a newly renovated community shelter. Michael turned to Malik and said, "I grew up believing success was about numbers on a screen. That night reminded me it's about people." He gestured toward the building. "This place will be a new start for many who've been forgotten, and I'd like you to help run it." Malik's eyes widened. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of hopelessness begin to lift. Michael continued, "That $4 you gave me, it was worth more than anything I own. It reminded me that kindness is the greatest investment." Word of their story spread throughout the city. News outlets reported on the unlikely bond between the homeless man and the billionaire. Many who had once ignored Malik now greeted him with respect. More importantly, the shelter became a refuge for hundreds of people struggling with poverty and discrimination. Malik used his new position to advocate for them, becoming a voice for those who had none. In time, the story of the man who gave his last $4 to a stranger became a symbol of hope. It reminded the city that compassion can cut through the walls built by prejudice, and that even in a world divided by race and class, simple humanity can unite us. As Malik often told the volunteers at the shelter, "You never know what someone's story is. Sometimes the person you help is the one who helps you change the world." The story closed not with wealth or fame, but with the enduring truth that the smallest act of kindness can spark the most significant change. Would you give your last dollar to a stranger? Malik did, and it changed his life forever. What would you do?